The morning sun streamed softly through the windows of the recording studio, casting long golden streaks across the polished wooden floors. The air was filled with a quiet hum of activity as stagehands, camera operators, and assistants scurried back and forth, checking lights, microphones, and instruments. It was a day unlike any other, because today, one of the most popular live television music competitions in the world was taking place. The show had a reputation for discovering young talent, and people from different corners of the globe had gathered to watch the performances. Families, music enthusiasts, and even professionals in the industry filled the seats, their excitement creating a tangible energy that buzzed in the air. Among the crowd, hidden in a quiet corner backstage, were two children Japanese twins. They were both 12 years old, identical in appearance, with dark, straight hair falling neatly to their shoulders and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to observe everything silently. Their clothes were simple but neat. Nothing flashy, nothing designed to draw attention. They carried with them a quiet confidence that came not from arrogance, but from years of discipline, practice, and a deep love for music. Unlike some of the other contestants who were busy rehearsing loudly or taking selfies, the twins sat together, their hands resting lightly on their laps, occasionally exchanging calm, small smiles. No one in the room, not the audience, not the crew, seemed to notice them much. People passed by, talking about the other contestants' children who could play with speed, power, or showmanship. Some had flashy costumes, some had clever tricks, but the twins appeared almost ordinary. They didn't complain, didn't fidget, and didn't try to make themselves seen. Yet those who had heard their practice quietly knew that they were far from ordinary. They had prepared a piece, one they had composed themselves, something that combined traditional Japanese melodies with modern classical techniques. It was complex, demanding, and beautiful, and they were about to share it on a stage far bigger than anything they had ever performed on before. In a separate part of the studio, the famous conductor was preparing. He was a man in his 50s, with sharp features, a neatly trimmed beard, and an aura that demanded attention. He had been part of the music world for decades, and had seen hundreds, if not thousands, of young performers. On live TV, he had a reputation for being brutally honest, sometimes harsh, and often unkind. Some admired his knowledge and precision. Others feared his judgment. Today, he was especially critical. He was looking for children who could perform at a level that would impress not only the audience, but also him. And he was not planning to hide his opinion. When he caught sight of the twins backstage, he raised one eyebrow in mild amusement. He leaned slightly toward one of the judges sitting next to him and whispered something, a small smirk forming on his lips. The cameras captured the moment, and though the words were quiet, they were enough to make the audience backstage chuckle. He had mocked them without even hearing a note of their music, simply judging them based on their quiet demeanor and unassuming clothes. The twins did not react. They had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving, and that the world often underestimated quiet talent. They simply nodded to each other and focused on the music they were about to present. Backstage, the host walked over to greet the twins, a warm smile on her face. "Are you ready?" she asked softly, aware of the pressure of the moment. The twins nodded, their expressions calm, but their hearts racing slightly. They were nervous, of course. Anyone would be nervous before performing on live television in front of thousands of people and millions more watching at home. But they also trusted themselves. Every note, every chord, every rhythm had been practiced countless times. They had been ready for moments like this their entire lives, even if no one else had noticed. The host gave them a small encouraging nod and then moved on to the next contestant. The twins walked slowly toward the stage, holding their instruments carefully. The piano bench was already set, the keys shining under the bright stage lights. One twin would play the piano, and the other would accompany on a violin. They had rehearsed this arrangement countless times, each practicing not only their own part, but also understanding what the other would play. It was a silent conversation between them, a dialogue without words, and it was something they had perfected over years of practice. As they approached the stage, the conductor stood up, adjusting his jacket. His eyes followed the twins, and he couldn't hide the smirk on his face. He had seen many children attempt complex music and fail, and he assumed this would be no different. He even made a small joke to the audience, a whispered comment about how children at that age were unlikely to handle serious compositions. Some in the crowd laughed politely, not knowing what to expect, while others simply waited in silence, curious to see how the twins would respond. The twins didn't react to the comment, and they didn't let it affect them. They walked calmly onto the stage, each step measured, each movement deliberate. They carried with them a presence that was quiet but commanding, a calmness that seemed almost unnatural for children their age. They reached the piano and violin, made a small bow to the audience, and then prepared to begin. The audience leaned forward slightly, sensing the tension in the room. The cameras switched angles, capturing every detail, the twins' hands on their instruments, the conductor's skeptical gaze, the judges whispering among themselves. A hush fell over the crowd. No one dared speak. No one dared move. Everyone knew that this moment could either be extraordinary or forgettable, and the suspense was almost unbearable. The twin who would play the piano took a deep breath and placed their fingers lightly on the keys. The other twin adjusted the violin under their chin, bow in hand. There was a quiet intensity in the air, a feeling that something important was about to happen. The audience could sense it, even if they didn't know exactly what. The conductor leaned slightly forward, waiting, already imagining how he would dismiss the performance. He thought he had seen it all, but he had no idea what was coming. The first note was played. It was soft, delicate, and precise. It was not loud or flashy, but there was an undeniable beauty in the sound. The twin on the violin followed, the bow moving gracefully across the strings, creating a melody that intertwined perfectly with the piano. The audience shifted in their seats, some smiling in surprise, others leaning closer, listening intently. The twins were not just playing notes. They were telling a story of discipline, passion, and quiet brilliance. The conductor's smirk began to fade slightly as he listened. He frowned, glancing at the sheet music. Something was unusual. The patterns, the timing, the interplay between the piano and violin were not typical for children of this age. He tried to anticipate the next notes, but the composition shifted in ways he had not expected. His fingers twitched slightly, and he muttered under his breath, a sound that was picked up faintly by the microphones. He was caught off guard, something he had not felt in years. The twins continued to play, unaware or perhaps indifferent to the conductor's reaction. They were focused entirely on the music, each note played with care, each rhythm executed with precision. It was clear to anyone watching that they had practiced not just to play the music, but to live it, to breathe life into every phrase. Their connection to each other, silent yet perfect, was mesmerizing. The audience could feel it. Even the stage crew stopped their movements for a moment to listen. By the time the first section of the composition was complete, the audience was silent, stunned by the unexpected beauty of what they had just heard. The conductor looked at the twins, trying to maintain his composure, but his eyes betrayed his surprise. For the first time that day, he seemed unsure, even slightly nervous. The twins, however, simply exchanged a calm glance and prepared for the next part of the performance. They had anticipated skepticism, ridicule, and doubt, but they had also prepared for it. They had come to the stage not to compete with the conductor or the audience, but to share their music in its truest form, that the host of the show, noticing the shift in atmosphere, leaned toward the camera with a small, astonished smile. The audience began to clap softly, unsure whether to cheer loudly or remain quiet out of respect for the performance. The twins did not pause. They flowed from one section to the next with a confidence that seemed impossible for their age. Every note, every pause, every subtle dynamic change was executed flawlessly. It was clear that these were not ordinary children. These were young artists, fully formed in their understanding of music, ready to challenge expectations. The conductor shifted in his seat, his initial amusement replaced by a mixture of curiosity and caution. He had underestimated the twins entirely, and now he was forced to pay attention in a way he hadn't anticipated. The cameras captured every micro-expression, the frown slowly softening, the tightening of lips, the flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes. He had seen many talented young performers, but rarely had one made him feel off balance in the middle of their own judgment dot as the twins moved toward a more complex section. The music began to intensify. Rapid passages, intricate harmonies, and subtle, shifting rhythms challenged not just the audience, but anyone who might try to follow along. Yet the twins handled it FO. The twins had just finished the first part of their performance, and the audience was still absorbing the delicate beauty of what they had heard. The soft clapping that had begun after the first notes now grew into a ripple of applause, gentle but appreciative. Yet backstage, the atmosphere was tense. The famous conductor, known for his sharp tongue and strict standards, was adjusting in his seat. His initial amusement had vanished, replaced by an uneasy curiosity he had not felt in years. He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing as he examined the sheet music the twins had just used. Every note, every pause, every dynamic shift seemed carefully calculated, and it challenged his expectations. He had assumed, like many others, that they would perform something simple, something suitable for their age. Instead, they had presented something precise, layered, and mature beyond their years. The conductor took a deep breath and straightened his posture. He was no stranger to young talent, but there was something unusual about these twins. He whispered under his breath, not noticing the microphone picking up a faint echo. Children this age should not play like that. This is too much. His voice carried a mixture of disbelief and irritation. To the audience, it was almost comedic, the way a man of such authority seemed caught off guard. But the conductor was determined not to be outdone. He had built a reputation on being unimpressed by appearances, and he wasn't about to lose that reputation on live television. Not to two quiet children. He tapped his fingers on the edge of the piano bench, a subtle but deliberate motion. Then, with a sharp gesture, he motioned for the twins to approach him. "Let's see what you can really do," he said, his voice firm but carrying an undercurrent of challenge. The twins stepped forward, calm and composed, carrying their instruments with the ease of children who had spent countless hours in practice rooms and concert halls, even if most people didn't know it. They approached the piano, where the conductor now sat, an air of superiority surrounding him. His hands rested on the keys, and he glanced up at them with a smirk. As if already imagining the flaws he would point out, the twins handed him their sheet music politely, and the conductor waved them away, saying, "No, no. You will see. I will play this. Let's prove that it is not as difficult as you think." His tone was laced with condescension, but he tried to disguise it under a confident, almost theatrical performance. The audience watched, intrigued. Some could sense the tension, some smiled, expecting the usual drama that the conductor was known for. Others were curious, sensing that the twins might actually surprise him. The twin who would normally play the piano stepped aside, allowing the conductor to sit properly. The other twins stayed near, violin in hand, waiting quietly, their eyes calm and observant. The conductor began to play. At first, the notes were simple, straightforward, as if testing the surface of the composition. The audience could hear him move through the early measures confidently, his fingers gliding across the keys with practiced skill. He smiled slightly, a hint of satisfaction on his face. "See?" he whispered, leaning toward the judges. Nothing extraordinary yet, but as he moved deeper into the piece, something changed. The music became more complex, the rhythms shifting unexpectedly, the harmonies requiring more than simple dexterity. He paused, his fingers hesitating mid-air, a faint frown crossing his face. He tried again, but the next measures were even trickier than the first. His eyes flicked nervously toward the twins. They stood silently, observing, not a trace of panic on their faces. It was clear that they were unfazed by his confidence, as if they had anticipated this moment and were fully prepared for it. The conductor's smirk faded. His fingers stumbled over an unexpected chord, then another. The sound was sharp, slightly discordant, drawing a few surprised gasps from the audience. He quickly tried to recover, but the composition continued to challenge him. Each measure demanded precision, timing, and subtle control over dynamics that were not simple to achieve, even for an experienced musician. His hands, normally steady and commanding, moved in sudden bursts, trying to force the notes, but the music resisted him. The tension in the studio increased. The audience, initially unsure of what to expect, now leaned forward in fascination. Even those who had been prepared to laugh at the conductor's theatrics now watched silently, captivated by the unexpected difficulty of the piece. The twins remained calm, their expressions neutral, but their eyes quietly encouraging. They did not intervene, did not speak, but the energy between them was palpable, a silent assurance that they knew exactly what was happening, and that they were ready for the next step. The conductor's voice, usually commanding and full of authority, now carried a hint of frustration. This is not simple," he muttered, glancing down at the notes. The audience caught every word. For the first time, they saw a crack in his confident exterior. The conductor, so often unflinching and severe, seemed human, vulnerable even, in the face of a challenge he had not anticipated. He tried to play again, but the sequence of notes, the shifts in rhythm, and the intricate interplay of harmonies were too complex to navigate on the fly. Mistakes began to appear, subtle at first, then more noticeable. A hush fell over the room. The stage crew paused in their movements. The cameras focused on the unfolding scene, and the judges leaned closer, watching every detail. The conductor stopped abruptly, lifting his hands from the keys. He stared at the sheet music, then at the twins, his expression a mix of disbelief and irritation. This is poorly written," he said quickly, almost reflexively, trying to save face. But the words were weak, and even he knew it. The music was not poorly written. It was challenging, carefully constructed, and clearly executed by hands trained to understand its depth. The twins exchanged a brief glance. They had expected skepticism, ridicule, and overconfidence, but they had also prepared for it. The twin holding the violin stepped slightly forward. "Sir," they said softly but clearly, "the sections you are struggling with are intentional. They are written to shift unexpectedly, to create tension, and to interact with each other in ways that are complex. This is how the piece is meant to be played." The conductor blinked, clearly taken aback. He had not expected correction from children. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words faltered. The twin continued, explaining briefly how the piano and violin parts were designed to complement each other, to create harmony despite the shifts, to tell a story through unexpected changes. Their explanation was calm, measured, and precise. The audience listened closely, intrigued by the courage and clarity of the twins. The conductor straightened in his seat, a mixture of surprise and grudging respect crossing his face. He had underestimated these children entirely, and now he realized it. He had assumed he would show them their limits, make a display of their inexperience, and perhaps amuse the audience. Instead, he was confronted with skill, preparation, and composure that far exceeded what he had imagined. His previous words, spoken with condescension, now hung awkwardly in the air. The twins did not press further. They simply handed back the sheet music and prepared to perform the piece themselves. The audience sensed the shift in power, not through dominance or aggression, but through quiet confidence and undeniable talent. It was a moment of tension, unlike any other. The conductor, though still seated at the piano, now observed rather than attempted to control. The audience, previously entertained by the drama, now watched in anticipation of what the twins would do next. The stage lights seemed brighter, or perhaps it was the intensity of the moment that made every detail visible. The piano twin sat down with a deep, steadying breath, fingers poised over the keys. The violin twin raised the bow gently, eyes focused, every muscle relaxed yet ready. They had prepared for this confrontation, not with anger or revenge, but with music. They were about to show, in a way that words could never capture, the depth of their understanding and the years of practice they had invested in their craft. The conductor leaned back slightly, hands folded over each other, watching intently. He was no longer performing. He was witnessing. The audience sensed his change in demeanor and grew silent, waiting for the twins to begin. The twins began to play. The first notes were soft, delicate, and precise. The piano moved gracefully, the violin weaving in with exact harmony. The complex rhythms and shifting melodies that had confounded the conductor were now executed flawlessly. The audience gasped quietly, captivated by the elegance and maturity of the performance. Even those who had initially expected a dramatic failure were now leaning forward in awe. The twins' music was not loud or flashy, but it was perfect. Every measure, every pause, every subtle change in dynamics was intentional, and it drew the listener in. The conductor's face showed a mixture of disbelief and admiration. He had expected to be the authority, the master. Yet here were two children performing at a level that challenged him completely. As the performance continued, it became clear that the twins were in complete control. They had anticipated every challenge, every moment of tension in the music, and they handled it with elegance. The audience was silent, not daring to move, not daring to interrupt the flow of sound that filled the studio. The conductor, so often the center of attention, now watched in quiet respect. By the end of tea, the conductor sat at the piano, his hands hovering uncertainly above the keys. He had attempted the piece once, twice, and now a third time, but every effort seemed to stumble. The composition the twins had created was far beyond what he had expected, filled with intricate rhythms and sudden changes that demanded complete focus. The notes leaped and twisted, and the harmony between the piano and violin was subtle yet challenging, something that required not just skill but intuition. Each time he tried to follow it, his fingers slipped slightly, a chord missed, a timing misjudged. He frowned, pressing his lips together as if to hold back the embarrassment that was slowly creeping over him. The audience watched silently. Some held their breath, sensing the tension on stage. Others whispered softly to their neighbors, unsure if what they were witnessing was part of the show's drama or a genuine struggle. The cameras shifted angles repeatedly, capturing the flustered expression on the conductor's face. He was usually so confident, so commanding, and yet now he seemed vulnerable, human in a way that no one in the studio had seen before. The twins stood a short distance away, calm and still, their eyes trained on the piano, watching and learning every subtle hesitation, every mistake. They were ready to step in if necessary, but they were patient. The conductor attempted again. His hands moved more quickly, trying to anticipate the twists and turns of the piece, but the rhythm changed unexpectedly. A measure that seemed straightforward became complicated with overlapping notes and delicate chords that demanded precision. The left hand, which he relied on to anchor the piece, struggled to keep pace with the shifting patterns in the right hand. His expression tightened, and he muttered under his breath, frustrated. "Impossible," he said quietly, though the word carried a hint of disbelief. He had underestimated these children, and now it was clear that they had prepared something far beyond his expectation. Backstage, the production crew exchanged glances. They had seen many young performers, and they had seen their share of conductors act flustered for dramatic effect. But this was different. The conductor's struggle was real, genuine. He was not performing for the cameras. He was genuinely challenged by the complexity of the music. The twins' work was sophisticated, precise, and executed with a depth of understanding that came from years of practice. The crew could sense that the audience was about to witness a rare moment, a confrontation between youthful genius and seasoned mastery. And it was electrifying. The twins whispered to each other, a short, quiet exchange of words that the audience could not hear. It was a simple acknowledgement that the conductor was struggling and that their time to perform fully would soon come. They had anticipated skepticism, ridicule, and the possibility of someone attempting to play their piece as a challenge, and now that moment had arrived. They remained calm, steady, and patient, understanding that timing was crucial. Their music was not about rushing or forcing the moment. It was about precision, about expressing something deeper than skill alone. The conductor attempted to continue, but the more he played, the more mistakes he made. The transitions that seemed simple on paper required subtlety in execution, and he found himself overcompensating in one hand while neglecting the other. Each attempt brought a small discordance, an almost imperceptible flaw that those trained in music could detect immediately. The audience shifted in their seats, leaning forward as they realized that something extraordinary was unfolding. The conductor, known for his control and dominance, was visibly struggling, and it was a rare sight that drew both concern and fascination. The host of the show, sensing the tension, leaned slightly toward the camera and whispered something to the co-host. Their expressions were a mixture of amazement and uncertainty. They had seen many skilled young performers, and they had seen the conductor display his authority countless times. But this was unusual. The conductor was facing a challenge he could not easily overcome, and the twins, standing quietly to the side, had not yet played a single note themselves. The audience began to murmur softly, anticipation building. No one wanted to interrupt the delicate balance of the moment. Finally, after several attempts, the conductor stopped. His hands hovered above the keys for a moment, then fell into his lap. He leaned back slightly, taking a deep breath, his forehead creased with concentration and frustration. The silence in the studio was almost complete, the kind of quiet that fills a room when everyone realizes that something unexpected has occurred. The twins remained calm, their faces composed, their posture relaxed yet attentive. They had anticipated this, had prepared for it, and now it was their moment to demonstrate the true depth of their abilities. The conductor's eyes met theirs. For the first time that day, there was no smirk, no hint of amusement, only a reluctant acknowledgement. He had underestimated them completely. The twins, in their quiet way, had challenged him in a manner that no one expected. The audience sensed the shift in power, not through confrontation or words, but through mastery, focus, and preparation. The twins had created a composition that required skill, patience, and understanding, and the conductor's inability to navigate it fully highlighted just how advanced their work truly was. The violin twins stepped forward, lifting the bow carefully. "Sir," they said softly but confidently, "if you would like, we can play the piece together. We prepared it so that each section flows into the next, and it is designed to be played in coordination. Perhaps that will make it clearer? The conductor paused, his fingers resting on the keys. He glanced at the twins, and at the audience, and finally at the sheet music again. There was a tension in his shoulders, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. He had been confident moments ago, ready to demonstrate his authority, but now he was forced to consider that he might have misjudged the children. The twins were not asking permission arrogantly. They were offering a chance for clarity, a chance to see the music in its full beauty. The audience sensed this shift. The subtle but unmistakable change in energy got the conductor nodded slowly. "Very well," he said, his voice measured but lacking the usual sharpness. The audience leaned forward, curious to see how the collaboration would unfold. The twins moved into position, piano and violin ready, and began to play together. The sound that emerged was precise, synchronized, and utterly captivating. The transitions that had challenged the conductor were now fluid, each note falling exactly where it should. The harmony between the instruments created a texture that was delicate, intricate, and expressive. The conductor watched intently, his hands still hovering above the keys. He tried to follow along, attempting to join the performance, but the twins' synchronization and understanding were flawless. Every phrase, every shift in rhythm, every subtle dynamic change was executed with a confidence and skill that left the audience breathless. Even the conductor, with decades of experience, found himself momentarily at a loss. His usual authority was overshadowed by the precision and the pain. Artistry of the twins. The audience erupted in soft murmurs of admiration. Some whispered to their neighbors, "They are incredible," while others simply sat, captivated by the sound. The twins played not to prove a point, not to show off, but to share the music they had created, to express something beyond words, beyond skill alone. Their performance was a dialogue, a conversation between piano and violin, between discipline and emotion, between preparation and intuition. The conductor's expression slowly shifted. The tension in his face softened, replaced by a grudging respect. He realized that this was not about competition or ego. It was about understanding and execution. The twins had created a piece that required deep musical insight, and they had executed it flawlessly. His own attempts had been insufficient, not because of a lack of skill, but because the composition demanded something beyond his expectation. The twins continued to play, moving into the more complex sections of the piece. Rapid arpeggios, unexpected pauses, and subtle shifts in dynamics challenged not just the listener, but anyone attempting to follow along. Yet the twins handled it effortlessly, their years of practice evident in every movement. The audience watched in awe, the quiet intensity of the moment drawing them into the music completely. Every note, every harmony, every subtle change was deliberate, executed with precision and care. The conductor remained seated, watching, no longer attempting to play. He had realized that this performance was beyond him in this context, not in skill, but in preparation and understanding. The twins had mastered the piece, and he could only observe, appreciating the artistry unfolding before him. The audience sensed this shift in the dynamic, a change from expectation to astonishment. The twins were no longer just performers. They were masters of their composition, fully in control of the music and the room. By the time the first major section of the piece concluded, the audience was silent, caught in a state of awe and admiration. The twins paused briefly, exchanging a calm glance, then prepared for the next phase. The conductor leaned back, his hands folded, a quiet respect evident in his posture. He had been challenged, humbled, and enlightened by the skill and preparation of these young musicians. The twins, calm and composed, were ready to continue, their focus entirely on the music, not the reaction it provoked, the audience. The twins took a small, steadying breath. They had been patient, observing, and waiting for the right moment. The conductor, confident at first, had now been humbled by their composition. He had tried to play it himself and failed, and the audience had witnessed his struggle. But the twins did not see this as an opportunity to embarrass him or boast about their abilities. They saw it as a chance to share the music in its full beauty, to show the complexity and emotion of the piece exactly as it was meant to be heard. The twin with the violin stepped forward first. They lifted the instrument carefully, their hands steady, their posture perfect. The bow hovered lightly over the strings, as if weighing the moment itself. The piano twin sat down at the bench, fingers poised above the keys, ready to begin. There was a quiet intensity in the air, a feeling that the entire room had been drawn into a delicate balance. The audience, who had been holding their breath for several minutes, leaned forward slightly, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. The twins began to play. The first notes were soft, almost fragile, yet filled with emotion. The piano and violin spoke to each other, weaving together a melody that was delicate but precise. The complex rhythms that had challenged the conductor before were now executed perfectly. Each note fell in its proper place, each pause felt intentional, and every shift in dynamics was handled with subtle skill. The music seemed to flow effortlessly, though the audience knew that it required immense discipline and practice to achieve such harmony. The conductor watched from his seat, a mixture of admiration and disbelief on his face. He had expected to show his authority, to demonstrate that the children's composition was too complex or too advanced for their age. Instead, he was witnessing a performance that surpassed anything he could have anticipated. His hands rested in his lap, and he leaned slightly forward, fully focused on the twins. For the first time that day, he was not performing or judging. He was learning, observing, and appreciating. The audience sat in stunned silence. They had seen the conductor stumble, and now they were watching the twins play with a level of skill and composure that was rare even among professional musicians. Some whispered quietly to their neighbors, unable to fully contain their amazement. Others simply leaned forward, eyes fixed on the stage, drawn into the intricate dialogue between the piano and violin. The studio lights shone brightly, illuminating the twins' calm, focused faces, their movements precise yet graceful. Every gesture, every glance at each other, every subtle shift in posture contributed to the perfection of the performance. The piano twins' fingers moved across the keys with fluidity, striking each note with care and intention. The left hand provided a steady, harmonious foundation, while the right hand danced across the higher registers, creating layers of sound that intertwined perfectly with the violin. The violin twin matched each movement, bowing with precision, adjusting pressure and speed to complement the piano's melody. Their synchronization was impeccable, a testament to years of practice, discipline, and an unspoken understanding between them. As the music progressed, the composition grew more complex. Rapid passages tested their speed and accuracy. Sudden shifts in rhythm required quick adjustments, and delicate harmonies demanded exact control. Yet the twins handled each challenge effortlessly. The transitions that had caused the conductor to falter were now smooth and natural. The audience could feel the tension and release in the music, the push and pull of emotion, and the subtle interplay between instruments that created a sense of depth and maturity far beyond the performer's years. The conductor's expression shifted as the performance continued. His initial skepticism had faded, replaced by a quiet admiration. He had expected a simple piece, a performance that would showcase the twins' potential, but still fall short of professional standards. Instead, he was witnessing a composition that was not only technically demanding, but emotionally compelling. He could see the structure, the balance, and the creativity behind each note. It was clear that the twins had not only practiced, but understood their music on a profound level. The audience's reaction grew stronger as the piece continued. Some could not contain their amazement and leaned forward, eyes wide, silently urging the music to continue. Others clapped softly, careful not to interrupt the delicate flow of sound. The studio seemed to hold its breath, completely captivated by the twins' performance. Even the stage crew paused, equipment in hand, unwilling to disturb the moment. The music had become the center of the room, commanding attention, respect, and wonder. The twins moved into the most challenging section of the piece, a passage filled with rapid sequences, intricate rhythms, and subtle harmonic changes. The piano required precise timing and quick hand movements, while the violin demanded exact bowing and coordination with each note. Many adults, even professional musicians, would have found this section difficult. Yet the twins played flawlessly, their movements synchronized, their focus unwavering. It was as if they were speaking to each other through the music, communicating silently, understanding each phrase instinctively. The conductor leaned forward, eyes fixed on their hands. He noticed the subtle adjustments they made in real time, correcting slight variations instantly, maintaining perfect balance between instruments. He realized that this was not just a performance, but a demonstration of mastery. The twins had anticipated every challenge, prepared for every possibility, and executed each moment with precision and artistry. The audience sensed this as well. The murmurs of surprise had faded, replaced by a deep, quiet appreciation for what they were witnessing. The music began to build, moving toward a dramatic climax. The piano and violin interacted more intensely, the tempo quickening, the harmonies becoming richer. The audience could feel the tension rising, their hearts sinking with the rhythm. Each note carried emotion, each phrase told a story, and every measure revealed the depth of the twins' understanding. It was no longer just a performance. It was an experience, a journey that transported everyone in the room into the world the twins had created. The conductor, usually quick to critique, now sat silently, fully absorbed. His hands rested lightly in his lap, his fingers occasionally tapping in rhythm, but he did not interfere. He had learned that this was beyond correction or guidance. It was a moment to observe, to understand, and to appreciate. The twins had turned the tables, transforming a situation that could have been intimidating into a display of talent, control, and grace. As the music reached its peak, the twins' coordination was flawless. The piano's intricate passages intertwined perfectly with the violin's melodic lines. The room seemed to vibrate with the energy of the performance, yet it remained controlled, elegant, and precise. The audience was captivated, many holding their breath, some closing their eyes to fully immerse themselves in the sound. Every movement of the twins, from the way their fingers pressed the keys to the subtle adjustments of the violin bow, contributed to a performance that was both technical and emotional, a balance that few musicians could achieve even at a professional level. The twins' expressions remained calm, almost serene. There was no hint of arrogance, no desire to dominate or show off. They played not for recognition, but for the music itself, for the story it told, and for the connection it created with those who listened. The conductor, watching closely, began to understand the depth of their talent. He had underestimated them, judged them by appearances, and assumed he could control the situation. Now he was witnessing a lesson in humility, artistry, and preparation. As the climax passed, the music shifted into a delicate, quieter section. The piano notes became softer, more reflective, while the violin wove gentle melodies above them. The audience was drawn in, listening intently to every nuance. Even small variations in dynamics, subtle changes in timing, and the tiniest adjustments in bow pressure carried meaning and emotion. The twins' mastery was evident not only in their technical skill, but in their ability to convey feeling, to breathe life into the composition, and to create an experience that transcended mere performance. The conductor's expression softened further. There was no longer skepticism or doubt, only admiration and respect. He realized that this was more than a display of talent. It was a demonstration of understanding, creativity, and discipline. The twins had anticipated challenges, prepared for criticism, and executed their vision flawlessly. They had transformed a moment that could have been intimidating into an extraordinary experience for everyone in the room. The audience, too, was completely captivated. They were silent, watching, listening, and absorbing every note. Some whispered softly to each other, unable to believe the skill and composure of such young performers. Others simply sat, letting the music wash over them, their emotions stirred by the beauty and precision of the performance. The twins had taken control of the stage, without words, without drama, simply through the power of their music. As the piece approached its final measures, the twins prepared for the concluding section. The piano moved with strength and precision, the violin matching every note with elegance and clarity. The harmony, the rhythm, and the emotion were all perfectly balanced. The audience felt the crescendo building, the tension rising, and the anticipation of the applause had begun to settle, but the energy in the studio remained electric. Everyone in the audience, from the crew members to the judges, was still processing what they had just witnessed. The twins had completed the first major section of their performance, transforming what had been a tense moment into a display of skill and artistry that left everyone in awe. But the piece was not yet finished. The twins had prepared a final section that would demand everything from them, both technically and emotionally. And they were ready to take the performance to its ultimate height. The piano twin adjusted their position slightly, their hands hovering over the keys for a brief second, taking a deep breath. The violin twin mirrored the action, raising the bow and pausing, creating a moment of silent anticipation. The audience leaned forward in unison, sensing that the climax of the performance was about to unfold. The conductor, who had just acknowledged their skill with a respectful nod, now sat quietly, watching intently. His earlier confidence had been replaced by a mixture of admiration and curiosity. He had never experienced a young performer challenging not only his expectations, but also his authority in such a profound and graceful way. Then, without a word, the twins began. The piano opened with a powerful, deliberate chord, followed by rapid sequences that demanded precise control. The violin answered with a melody that soared above the piano, weaving through the rhythm with perfect timing. The combination of strength and subtlety created a sound that was both commanding and delicate. Each note seemed carefully chosen, each pause meaningful, and every shift in tempo and dynamics carried emotional weight. The audience was immediately captivated, their attention fixed entirely on the stage. The conductor's eyes widened. He leaned forward, hands lightly resting on the piano as if instinctively wanting to participate, though he knew he could not match the twins' coordination at this moment. The piece was a complex dialogue, a challenge to both technical skill and emotional depth. It demanded not only precise execution, but an understanding of how the instruments spoke to one another. The twins moved as one, each anticipating the other's next note, each adjusting instinctively to maintain harmony and balance. It was a display of unspoken communication, the kind that comes only from countless hours of practice and mutual understanding. The audience could feel the energy in the room shift. The tension, the anticipation, the uncertainty, all of it melted away as the twins carried the music forward with flawless execution. The piano's rapid arpeggios created a wave of sound that was both intricate and powerful, while the violin added layers of emotion, carrying the melody through highs and lows, tension and release. Each phrase was deliberate, yet effortless, a perfect blend of skill, artistry, and intuition. Even those who had little musical training could sense the mastery and control in every movement. The conductor's expression changed again. There was no longer surprise or skepticism. It had transformed into admiration and something akin to awe. He had spent decades observing, judging, and teaching music, yet he had never encountered performers who could combine such technical precision with deep emotional expression at such a young age. His hands, usually so steady and commanding, rested in his lap as he watched, realizing that he was witnessing something rare, something extraordinary. The twins moved seamlessly into the next passage, one that was particularly challenging. The piano required rapid transitions between octaves, complex chord progressions, and subtle variations in touch. The violin demanded bowing with exact pressure, speed, and angle, as well as constant coordination with the piano. It was a section that would challenge even seasoned professionals, yet the twins executed it flawlessly. Their timing was perfect, their expression controlled yet expressive, and their synchronization near flawless. Every note and phrase was intentional, contributing to the story the music told. The audience was spellbound. Some held their breath, caught up in the intensity of the moment. Others leaned forward, unable to tear their eyes away from the stage. The sound of the piano and violin intertwined in a way that felt almost magical, a perfect balance of strength and subtlety, complexity and clarity. The twins had transformed the studio into a space where only the music existed, drawing everyone present into its narrative. Even the crew members behind the cameras paused, captivated by the sheer brilliance unfolding before them. The conductor, sitting in his seat, could not hide his reaction. His eyebrows rose slightly, his lips parted in a mixture of admiration and disbelief. He had anticipated challenging the twins, testing their limits, and perhaps demonstrating his authority. Instead, he found himself humbled, forced to acknowledge the depth of preparation, discipline, and talent before him. The twins were not performing to impress or dominate. They were performing to communicate, to share their music, and to tell a story through sound. As the performance continued, the twins entered the most dramatic section of the piece. The piano thundered with rapid, powerful sequences, the notes flowing in intricate patterns that demanded complete precision. The violin soared above, threading the melody with grace and emotional intensity. The combination of instruments created a tension that gripped the audience, pulling them along with each rising and falling phrase. The twins' focus never wavered. Their eyes occasionally met briefly, a silent acknowledgement of each other's timing and intention. Before returning to their instruments with absolute concentration. The conductor leaned slightly forward, unable to resist the pull of the music. He could feel the complexity and skill required in every measure, recognizing that these young performers had achieved something few adults could master. Their control over the instruments, their understanding of rhythm, melody, and emotion, and their ability to communicate so effortlessly were remarkable. He could sense the audience responding as well, their silent awe growing with each passing note. The twins' performance reached a crescendo. The piano's rapid sequences and resonant chords combined with the violin's soaring lines to create a sound that was both intense and beautiful. The audience was captivated, caught in the moment, their emotions rising with the music. Some closed their eyes to fully absorb the experience, while others leaned forward, gripping the edge of their seats. The room seemed to vibrate with the energy of the performance, yet it remained controlled, precise, and deliberate. The conductor could no longer contain his admiration. He had seen many talented young musicians, but rarely had he encountered performers with such mastery and composure. The twins' ability to execute a piece of this complexity, to navigate its technical challenges while conveying deep emotion, was extraordinary. He realized that he had underestimated them entirely, assuming that appearances and age could predict ability. He had been proven wrong, and in the most undeniable way possible. The twins moved into the final, most delicate passage of the piece. The piano softened, each note measured and expressive, while the violin followed with gentle melodic lines. The contrast with the previous intensity created a sense of resolution and closure, a delicate balance that required subtlety and control. The audience listened in rapt attention, their eyes and ears fully attuned to every nuance. Even small variations in timing, touch, and pressure carried meaning, demonstrating the twins' mastery and understanding of music beyond their years. As the final notes approached, the twins' coordination was flawless. The piano struck the last chords with a gentle strength. The violin echoed the final melody softly, allowing the sound to fade into silence. The room remained still for a brief moment, as if holding its collective breath before the audience erupted into applause. The sound was overwhelming, a mixture of amazement, admiration, and joy. People stood, clapping, cheering, and some even wiping away tears, unable to contain their emotions. The performance had touched them deeply, leaving an impression that went far beyond technical skill. The conductor rose from his seat. His hands, once confident and commanding, now clapped slowly, deliberately, as he approached the twins. His expression was serious, yet full of respect, his eyes reflecting the awe he felt for their performance. He extended his hand toward them, a gesture of acknowledgement and admiration. The twins shook it politely, bowing slightly, maintaining their calm and humble demeanor. The audience watched the exchange, understanding that something extraordinary had occurred. The twins had not only performed a complex and beautiful piece, but had also transformed the energy of the studio. They had taken a moment that could have been filled with tension, doubt, and ridicule, and turned it into a demonstration of skill, preparation, and artistry. The conductor, once dismissive, now stood in respect, fully aware of the level of talent and dedication the twins had achieved. The audience continued to applaud, their excitement and admiration filling the room. Some whispered to their neighbors, expressing disbelief at the twins' abilities, while others simply sat, absorbing the impact of the performance. The twins stepped back slightly, bowing gracefully, their faces calm and composed. They had not sought attention or validation. They had shared their music with authenticity, and the audience's response was a natural reflection of the power and beauty of their performance. Backstage, the crew members exchanged glances, some smiling, others shaking their heads in. The applause continued to echo through the studio, but the twins had already lowered their instruments. Their faces were calm, composed, yet inside, a quiet sense of fulfillment pulsed through them. They had faced ridicule, doubt, and the unexpected challenge of a famous conductor who had underestimated them. Yet they had performed flawlessly, turning the moment into a triumph, not through arrogance or words, but through skill, preparation, and grace. The audience was still clapping, some rising to their feet, unable to contain their admiration, and the energy in the room was electric. The conductor remained at the piano for a moment, reflecting on what he had just witnessed. He had come to the studio confident, ready to display his expertise and perhaps show the twins their limits. Instead, he had experienced something far more profound. The performance had challenged his assumptions, humbled his ego, and reminded him that mastery is not determined by age or reputation, but by preparation, dedication, and understanding. Slowly he rose, clapping deliberately, allowing the audience to see that he was genuinely impressed. The host of the show moved closer to the twins, microphone in hand, a look of awe on their face. "That was incredible," they said. "You have shown everyone here that talent and preparation can overcome even the highest expectations. How does it feel to perform at this level under such pressure?" The twins exchanged a brief glance before one of them spoke softly. "We focused on the music. That was all we wanted to do. The notes, the harmony, the story. It was about sharing that with everyone here. That is what mattered to us, not proving anyone wrong." The audience responded with applause again, appreciating the humility and poise of the twins. They had expected drama, perhaps even a confrontation, but instead, They had witnessed something rare and beautiful. The performance was not just technically impressive. It had conveyed emotion, understanding, and artistry that moved everyone present. Even those who had doubted the twins found themselves reflecting on their own assumptions about talent, age, and appearances. The conductor approached the twins, extending his hand once more, this time with a smile that conveyed both respect and admiration. "You have done something extraordinary today," he said. "I came expecting to challenge you, to test your limits, but instead I have learned from you. Your music, your understanding, and your composure are beyond anything I have seen from performers your age. You have reminded me that true artistry is about more than reputation. It is about heart, discipline, and courage." The twins shook his hand politely, acknowledging his words with a nod. They did not seek praise or recognition. They had only wanted to perform the music they had prepared, and in doing so, they had achieved far more than anyone in the room had anticipated. The audience sensed this humility, and their applause grew louder, filled with genuine appreciation for the twins' talent and character. It was a moment that transcended competition, rivalry, or judgment. It was a celebration of dedication, skill, and artistry. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every expression, every movement, every reaction. The crew backstage whispered quietly among themselves, marveling at what had unfolded. They had seen many performances, many young talents, but few had left such a profound impact. The twins had demonstrated not only technical mastery, but also the power of calm confidence, patience, and preparation. Their performance had been a lesson in humility for the conductor, the audience, and anyone who had doubted them. The judges, who had observed in silence, now spoke, their voices filled with admiration. "This is a rare moment," one said. "To see performers so young handle such a complex piece with precision, emotion, and maturity is extraordinary. They have set a new standard for what is possible, not just for young musicians, but for all of us who believe in the power of dedication and understanding." Another judge nodded in agreement. "It is not just about skill," they said. "It is about preparation, communication, and heart. These twins have shown all of that and more." The conductor nodded in agreement, his usual stern demeanor softened by genuine respect. He had learned something that day that could not be taught in a classroom or a master class. It was a reminder that assumptions can mislead, that age and appearance do not determine ability, and that talent combined with dedication and humility can surpass even the highest expectations. He realized that he had been challenged not just by the technical difficulty of the piece, but by the twins' composure, patience, and grace under pressure. After a brief pause, the host returned to the microphone. "You have left everyone here speechless," they said, "not only with your skill, but with your poise and humility. What comes next for you both?" One twin smiled softly. "We will keep practicing," they said. "There is always more to learn. Music is endless, and we want to keep discovering it, sharing it, and improving. Today was one step, and we hope to continue our journey." The audience erupted into applause again, this time for the twins' humility and commitment as much as their performance. They had faced a challenge, exceeded every expectation, and done so without arrogance. They had allowed the music itself to speak, and in doing so, they had created a moment that would remain in the memory of everyone present. Even the conductor, who had once ridiculed them in private moments, now regarded them with deep respect and admiration. As the applause continued, the twins stepped down from the stage, allowing others to approach. Students, teachers, and fellow musicians congratulated them, asking questions about their preparation, practice routines, and how they had developed such a strong connection with their music. The twins answered politely, always returning the focus to the music itself rather than personal accolades. They spoke of patience, hours of practice, and learning to listen, not just to their instruments, but to each other and to the music itself. The conductor lingered nearby, observing the interactions. He realized that this performance had changed something in him. He had approached the situation with confidence, expecting to demonstrate superiority, but instead he had been humbled, taught, and inspired. The twins had shown him that true talent is paired with patience, preparation, and understanding, and that the most remarkable performances come from those who respect their craft and approach it with humility. The production crew began to wrap up the broadcast, but the energy in the studio remained high. The audience continued to discuss the performance in hushed tones, sharing their astonishment and admiration. Many noted the twins' calm composure, their ability to perform under pressure, and the emotional depth of their music. It was clear that this was not just a performance for entertainment. It had become a lesson in humility, preparation, and the power of dedication. Outside the studio, word of the twins' performance quickly spread. Clips of their music, moments of their composure, and even the conductor's reactions began circulating online. People marveled at the skill and maturity of such young performers. Articles and social media posts praised not only their technical ability, but also their humility and focus. The twins became an example of what can be achieved with dedication, practice, and respect for the art itself. The conductor, reflecting on the day's events, felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had been reminded that even as an expert, there is always something new to learn. Talent can come from unexpected places, and humility is essential for growth. The twins had shown him that age, reputation, and appearances are not indicators of ability, and that true mastery comes from patience, preparation, and a deep understanding of the craft. That the twins returned home that evening, their minds still filled with the energy of the performance and the reactions of the audience. They discussed the moments that had gone well, the challenges they had faced, and the satisfaction of sharing their music so successfully. Though proud, they remained humble, recognizing that this was only one step in their journey. There was more to learn, more to explore, and more music to discover. Their focus remained on growth, understanding, and the joy of performing. Over the following days, invitations to perform at various venues and events began to arrive. Musicians, educators, and even the conductor himself reached out, offering opportunities to collaborate, teach, and share their talent with wider audiences. Yet the twins remained grounded, choosing carefully which opportunities to accept, always prioritizing learning and growth over fame. They had learned that recognition is valuable, but true fulfillment comes from dedication, mastery, and the ability to express oneself through music. The conductor, now a mentor rather than a critic, began corresponding with the twins, offering guidance and encouragement. Their relationship, once marked by challenge and skepticism, evolved into mutual respect and admiration. The conductor shared his experiences, advice, and insights, while the twins continued to refine their skills, applying lessons in practice, performance, and musical interpretation. It was a collaboration that benefited both parties, strengthening the twins' understanding and inspiring the conductor with their dedication and talent. Months later, the performance they had delivered on live television continued to be remembered and shared. Young musicians cited it as an example of what can be achieved with focus, preparation, and humility. Educators used it as a teaching moment, highlighting how skill, patience, and respect for the craft can surpass even the Hig.